Greetings, I'm John Carl. Welcome to another installment of the Retirement Spectrum, where we interview the thought leaders and industry practitioners on the elite side of the equation in our wonderful retirement industry, which is all working towards the objective of helping Americans retirement with dignity and satisfactorily, if not fantastically. So today, we have the pleasure and privilege of chatting with some folks that I've had the privilege of knowing for quite some time, the good people at Flynn Financial. So we have Tim Flynn, managing partner, CEO of Flynn Financial, along with Joe Pigott, also a partner and the director of the retirement and corporate services groups there, some of the verticals of the $2 billion Flynn Financial organization. So, Tim, let me chat with you first. Welcome, Tim.
Well, thank you for having me, John. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you and the team at RLC.
Always good fun. And Joe, welcome to the Retirement Spectrum as well, too.
Thank you, John.
Good to have you guys here. So, Flinner, I'm going to start with you first. Unfortunately for the audience, you and I have known each other for, Christ, what do we say now, 25, 30 years or something like that.
Yeah, you've certainly aged a lot better, John, than I have over those 25 to 30 years.
I don't know about that, Flinner. It's all good. But, it's funny. We start our spectrum by talking about the people behind the practice. I mean, you run a $2 billion, fantastic investment boutique and advisory firm now. But, tell us a little bit about Tim Flynn. I think a lot of people might be pleasantly surprised that you were one heck of a track athlete that ran up at UMass Amherst, right?
That would be true. That's about 35 years ago, far more than half my life ago.
What was your event?
I was a miler. You
were the miler. And then, of course, now I know your kids, and particularly your three daughters, who, no offense, Tim, but they inherited their wife's looks. But they inherited Louise's looks, but they inherited your running skills, right? All three of them scholarship athlete ladies in NCAA, right?
That's true, John. They were lucky enough with their brains and their mom's good looks and temperament and fast feet to all three of them obtain Division I college track scholarships at Boston College, two of them, and my youngest daughter is currently out at Stanford University on a track scholarship.
Yeah, I enjoyed being with many meets with my son there, watching them do their thing. And you have a son
who's a great jumper.
Yeah, he's up at UMaine. And then you've got a son yet coming up. What's he going to do? Is he running or is he, playing something else?
Well, he's playing basketball during the winter, but he does run on the bookends of the year. He runs cross country and track, and he is doing some independent competition during the winter and track. So. And he's up at Iona Prep as well here in Westchester County.
Well, you've balanced, being a great father along with running this $2 billion practice. So I want to start a little bit about the construct of your business and the verticals that aid both on the retirement plan side, but also on the participant side and the wealth management side. If you could expand a little bit on that, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely, John. And we're happy to. So, I discovered pretty early on, having a background in the institutional space and crossing over to a lesser extent through my kind of tenure in a career to the individual side, that I was trying to do two things. It's somewhat difficult to make that transition effectively. So what we did a number of years ago, is I created three verticals or three silo constructs, each of which are independent, but also interdependent on each other. We currently have, which is again a carryover to my prior life, an institutional asset management component where we're managing pools of assets for institutions, municipalities, utilities, foundations, nonprofits, and other large organizations. We have a very, very, very strong private client group, which is fully staffed and again, fully independent. And now we have a fully constructed and growing retirement plan vertical. Each one of those silos, again, is independently staffed and has a director at the top of each. And each one of those is supported by a central administrative function in-house, as well as, and I think this is an important distinction, an in-house investment analytical function. We don't outsource our investment analytics. We certainly lean on a lot of the support provided to us by our various partners, as well as our broker-dealer and RIA. But again, the functionality of our investment team is in-house supporting each of those verticals, and they are independent. But this is critical, John. They're also interdependent. They inform, and each is benefited from the other. And I can certainly explain that as we go on. And I think that construct of having those types of silos has worked really, really, really well for us, and more importantly, for each one of our clients.
It makes a lot of sense, Tim, and I know your practice well, and you did start off really as an institutional consultant, a lot of municipalities, et cetera. When you look at your $2 billion organization right now across your silos, what's the ballpark of each, and which ones, what is the growth trajectory, in particular of the retirement plan space, which I think is a hot one for you?
Yeah, no, I could absolutely talk about that. So currently, if we start with the institutional, that number currently is about $600 to $700 million. Our private client side, currently with our partners, we have a number of partners that are focused. That's the bulk of our advisors are over in that side of the house, is currently about $800 million. And the remainder is currently the retirement plan side of the house. And that is, in fact, John, the fastest growing, on a net basis. We're not looking at market growth or market appreciation. We're looking at the accumulation of new assets. It is not only the fastest growing part of our practice, but it is also the most exciting and arguably the most impactful. And we also see the opportunity, because of this construct that we have, that it could in future years will provide great growth opportunity to the other sectors or the other silos of our portfolio, or excuse me, of our corporate structure, right? So that's our fastest growing, and that really has been driven, John, by my acquisition and convincing Joe to make the leap from wholesaler over to our side of the business. I couldn't be happier with that.
Well, perfect segue, because you did bring on Joe Pigott, who is a partner in your firm, full partner, and he's the director of your retirement and corporate services, and a gentleman that I knew in his previous life as well, too, and now he's a partner here at Flynn Financial, running that, retirement and corporate services. So, Joe, welcome here.
Thanks, John.
Why don't you talk to me a little bit about a day in the life of Joe? But before we get there, you were a wholesaler, Joe, a high-end, I'd say, consultative type wholesaler. Tell us a little bit about that world and how you made the transition, or why you made the transition, and why you picked Flynn Financial to do so.
That's a great question. Well, Tim and I have known each other for a better part of 20 plus years, and we didn't do a lot of business together early on, which was because we, who I worked for, but it was a great kind of relationship that we kept going throughout the years. And I spent about 15 years of 24 with Principal, and I spent the balance, the latter part of my career with Empower, and learned a ton about the industry. I got to see kind of the best advisors. At the time, I worked with some of the top advisors in the country in the Northeast here. But I kind of felt my value was kind of stunted a little bit. And Tim and I had many conversations about, you're wholesaling, but then once you sell that plan, you walk away, and what happens to the participant? How does the plan sponsor get what they need from the advisor? And, my experience with a lot of the top advisors where they very much focused on maybe being a 321 and the investments. And I, my vision, and I think Tim would share this with me, part of that becomes commoditized. And the value is, what are the other value adds you can bring to the table, from fiduciary documentation, from generating meeting minutes, from actually making a significant impact to the participants through one-on-one education. So my passion kind of grew as Tim and I talked, and, and again, I made the move over here and, right before COVID, I gave my notice to the Super Bowl in 2020. My wife had asked me, are you sure this is a good idea? I said, I'm all in. It's a great idea. I said, it's going to be fine. And we've grown tremendously already. And again, I think it's providing that additional value, the investment management we do. And to Tim's point, that core center of our business allows me to do more with the client, from fiduciary documentation, from generating meeting minutes, trustee meetings, participant education, because my investment team puts my investment menus together. We've actually started and are very well into our 338 as well. So we do 321 and 338. So again, it was really kind of being able to do more for clients.
Yeah, Joe, you bring up an interesting point. Obviously, Tim talked about your financial in-house research acumen, right? And that drives to your point. What we find a lot of times is a lot of, plan advisors spend an inordinate amount of time on the investment side of the house. And obviously that's important. It's essential. It's valuable. But what I've noticed about you all at Flynn Financial is you tend to operate more in a governance perspective, where investment's certainly one of the silos, one of the tenets. But, you bring other things on a more planned governance outcome oriented level. Is that a fair statement, Joe?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most critical. I mean, the Department of Labor is not finding plan sponsors because they have an investment that may or may not be the best, right? They're being fined for operational defects, for lack of documentation. And again, every decision as a fiduciary, and John, you know this better than anybody, ERISA's got teeth in it to personal liability. So when we work with our plan committee members and trustees, I mean, we kind of have them understand that there's liability here, and it's not corporate liability. It's not covered by your E&O policy. It's personal liability. And again, one of the most important things, and we run across this all the time, is a lot of folks are doing a pretty good job, sometimes a very good job. They're not necessarily documenting what they're doing. So fiduciary documentation and having a system of workflow once that decision's made, to make sure that that plan provision is carried through to an amendment, or that investment change is being made. So we've got both the documentation capture, and we also have a service activity monitoring and tracking system, which is tremendous. And that was one of the things that Tim had kind of given me Joe, look at what we have available between our two RIA shops, because we're hybrid, we can do either or. Look at the tools, and I want you to decide what you want to do and how you want to move going forward. So the path I've taken, and I think Tim would agree, is really something that is not very common out in our industry. And I think it's a big differentiator.
Right, Joe. And that's the technology that you brought in-house and that Tim sanctioned the investment in, right? Where you work with committees with a technology platform that is unique, I think, that I've, seen in the industry. Tell us how you run through that and how that systematizes and streamlines the process.
Yeah, so basically, the meetings are done through the software, and we build the agenda based on all the different items in our consulting agreement that we've agreed to provide. So from a compliance perspective, we're checking all the boxes. And again, when you walk a committee member through, the nice part about it is that, Tim and I do some together. So Tim might be on the phone and I'm literally typing in the system as we're speaking. So the different notes, the conversation, we've just added the QDIA a section to it where, a lot of people choose a QDIA, but they don't have a rationale whether they do a to or through retirement, to or through a target date. And, the DOL wants you to kind of explain what your thought process was and document your thought process. And we actually have literally, we create motions within that software right on the spot and on the fly. And then we can have a vote with the committee members who are attending the meeting, whether it's virtual or live. And then right at that point, we create service activities. So, putting that decision into action is critical, because a lot of times I've been around committees and they've made decisions, and all of a sudden 3-4 months later, somebody didn't contact somebody to make a provisional change or whatever. So it gives us the activity tracking, and that's both on the plan sponsor and the participant side.
Yeah, Joe, you're nailing it right out of the park. Something we talk about a lot, which is, the inevitable, certainly, soon to be enacted Secure 2.0, in our opinion, is going to, as you said, require mandatory auto enrollment. Okay. And then go further and say to plan sponsors, if we're going to require mandatory auto enrollment, we want to have a benchmarking or a documentation of that QDIA. And I think a lot of plan sponsors are going to be caught flat-footed there, but that is a solution that you're providing. You're already doing it now. So when it comes to compliance, that should be a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
So Flannery, I want to go back to you here and talk a little bit about this investment that you've made in this retirement business. Because clearly you reached into your pockets, you brought in an industry rock star in Joe, who is obviously not cheap to run this business. You've invested in the technology side. Give me some of the rationale, because you mentioned earlier in the podcast here that you see the retirement business as one of your top growth engines, but it's also benefiting the other silos, the other verticals that you have in your business. You want to explain a little bit about that, Tim?
Yeah, John, clearly I do. I mean, so from an altruistic point of view, the reason we made this investment is I had hired an outside consultant, to look at me and my practice a number of years ago, or my practice and I, excuse me for the bad English. And clearly, when I asked the consultant, what were the limitations or the Achilles heels of my business, it was pretty clear that he said, it's you. You're trying to basically operate yourself in all three silos. So I realized I needed to get people who were equally as strong or stronger. And I think in each silo, I met that by getting people that were stronger and better and could focus in an absolutely pure and dedicated way on driving that silo and driving that outcome of that vertical. And it's been rewarding. So for me, it was recognizing that was the weaker of our silos. We were still running a very good retirement plan practice, just not the one at the level that I would want. And taking it a step further, John, for me, I recognized that our group or any advisor in my place, if they really accept this, they're going to be, in many cases, the closest that many plan participants come to a financial advisor. So if the real reason I'm in this business and went into this business is to truly help people, is there any better way for me to help people than to create scale by having plans where we can be delivering meaningful outcomes and changing people's lives? Because a person in an entry level or mid-level of a number of our plans don't have the benefit in many cases of getting an advisor. They don't have enough wealth. And if they do have wealth, it's constructed in a plan and they can't, basically pay the advisor. And the advisor's not going to want to do it for free. So for me, making the investment was kind of planting the seeds to help participants to truly make a difference, to help plans run better, sponsors be more compliant, and for us over time to get the opportunity. Because what we are finding, John, by our deliverables, is we are getting the opportunity to work and cross-pollinate, working with them in the institutional asset management, managing corporate asset, and in some cases at differing levels, working with participants. Again, all within a rubric and construct of what is appropriate and prudent given the DOL governance. But we are doing a lot of planning for a number of our executives and different level employees that they may have with regard to their other financial needs. And that's been a benefit to them and one that's appreciated by our plan sponsors.
Yeah, you're nailing a huge tenet and right on the money where I'm going with this, Tim, because, a lot of retirement plan shops, almost, I don't want to say it in, too pejorative a fashion, but, they love working with the committees, but they almost disdain the participants, right? Isn't that the reason we're in the business here? And you see a lot of folks go into robo-advice, et cetera. And of course, one of our sponsors of the spectrum is IRA Logics, and there's not a better firm, out there to talk about, when you're in a plan, rollovers come in all different sizes and shapes. And certainly, you've got executives maybe with $1 million and up rollovers. But what about the participants with the smaller accounts? And how does your wealth management business service those rollovers, coming out of the plan?
Yeah, John. So we clearly recognize the value of technology. We've embraced it in our own organization, as Joe said earlier. But technology, whether it's the technology that Joe's using in-house or a robo platform, it has its place and it can support the advisor. Where I do think technology or robo advice falls flat is that it needs to have and be in partnership with an advisor, because technology or robo advice tends to be very binary. It's either or, yes or no, black or white. And it's in the shades of gray and the nuance that can be understood and delivered by an advisor. And while sometimes our biggest job is to provide protection from the individual themselves, i.e., don't act emotional when you get a little bumpy, bringing a little bit of emotion and understanding as an advisor in partnership with a robo engine or a managed platform can be beneficial, because sometimes the most important thing is getting a person who's not enrolled to enroll. Sometimes the most important thing, John, is to get a person to do auto increase. Or I can't do it now. Joe Software can remind them in 6 months, so that they begin to take the participant behaviors that will drive to positive outcomes. So for us, what I look at is, depending on the various levels of need, it can either be met in Joe's vertical, because we have 2 people that focus on plan education and participant proactive and reactive outreach.
In plan, yep.
Within that silo. But we also have 6 senior advisors in the private client side currently. 3 of those have been new ads, John, in the last year. So those numbers haven't yet caught up because they're transitioning in books of business. But again, having, as an example, 2 CFAs in that role, or having 2 CFP advisors there, allow us to meet the participants where they are. And it's a short walk from where Joe is to where they're housed in our office. So again, it can be informing either way. But it is important to not have technology replace the advisor, because Joe knows last week in a finalist presentation for a big plan, I needed to make that distinction. It's not the technology, it's us. The technology just supports what we do and allows us to do more of it.
It's a great way to explain it, Tim. Offering a retirement services with a retirement to wealth, really supporting the participant and the participant outcome, which at the end of the day, what we talk about in the retirement spectrum is talking with the thought leaders, which you certainly are, but the great practitioners that are making it happen and taking care of our participants. So hats off to you on that. Now, I do want to shift gears a little bit and get both of you to chime in on this. This year, we've certainly been through an interesting time frame. We've got a new administration in-house. We now have a new head of EBSA in place, and we've got some things on the docket regulatory-wise. Secure 2.0, we've got cybersecurity, at least at this point, that are guidance, which is probably going to become codified at some point. We've got ESG, we're just finishing a comment period. There's a lot of regulatory things going on in the world of plan sponsors. And I'd be remiss to say, if I didn't say 2 things, that you're an RLC direct user where we feed you a lot of that stuff. How are you and Joe going about educating plan sponsors and helping them get ahead of the trends and making good decisions, with a well-designed plan and be prepared for, what's coming down the pike?
Joe, can I speak to it? And then Joe, you'll finish?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the first is kind of an endorsement to John. For a long time, as John knows, we've been a big supporter of John and what he's done and what he's doing. Clearly, no better thought leader, in our opinion, in the industry. When the opportunity was given to us to become a direct subscriber, we jumped at that opportunity. And in fact, I just signed my renewal for the upcoming year yesterday and sent it off to John's folks in Brainerd, and happily did that for a number of years. But we clearly lean on the support of our external partners as needed, and none more important than RLC, particularly in the areas of what might be coming down the pike. And it's important for us to be informed, and to be informed in a non-biased, and again, I don't mean this to bash any of our external product folks, but in a non-biased way vis-a-vis their product having a solution. We want, real, raw kind of data, unfiltered, and what's happening. And it's interesting because Joe, and this is to Joe's silo, Joe does 2 things. And I think those 2 things are really, really important, John, speaking to what you do. The first is that in the construct of his minutes and the software that he talked about with the committee, he's bringing a number of those things in through an entry, legislative or regulatory updates that's right in the agenda with the committee. So when we're doing a quarterly or an annual, Joe's already doing a lot of that at the committee level. But the other piece that's really, really important, and I respectfully suggest that other, folks that take the plan space seriously, when we do our quarterly investment reviews, we pick a different topic every quarter to attack across our plan space. So it might be making sure that you've got updated fiduciary bonds and they're at the appropriate level, making sure that you're attacking beneficiary designations, so participants have determined beneficiaries, or looking at different components in the legislative or regulatory space. And by creating a periodization and doing that, it allows us to develop a cadence with our plan sponsors that's not only supportive, but also informative and will drive to a better plan outcome.
Honestly, we have a section which is legislative updates, and obviously we lean on RLC for a lot of that thought leadership there. And we actually have it part of our meeting minutes. I mean, and talk about cybersecurity, man, that's a very hot topic. And we literally will download or get from the record keeper their cybersecurity policy. We'll actually bring it into the meeting minutes. We'll store the document in our system so that the plan sponsors got access to it. We've actually even implemented and voted on plan sponsors sending notices out to their participants, because most people don't realize that the participant has to do a few things in order to be protected by a cybersecurity guarantee from various providers, and they have to make sure that they've signed on. I can't tell you how many, more in our blue collar firms, but people get a profit sharing contribution. They don't log on to the system, or they just read their statement, even if they're contributing. If you don't log on and set up two-factor authentication, you're not going to be covered by a cybersecurity policy. So we want to make sure the sponsor knows that, and then help the sponsor draft a notice that we would obviously log in. And we have the ability now to push information out to participants that we have email addresses in our system. So it really is, it's an important part of it. And again, when we go through a committee meeting, it's generally, literally in the meeting minutes, are there going to be the topics that would affect their plan? Because some of these things are small plan startups, some of the things in the Secure Act 2.0. So we just want them to be aware and cognizant of it, and we want to keep it on record.
Right on the money, Joe. I think it's it's an exciting time to be such elite practitioners in the plan space, and I love the work that you do on the participant side of the equation. And Tim's obviously building, quite the well-structured business at $2 billion. I expect that thing to be doubling in the near future. But I'll give you one last thing here, Joe and Tim, for you to say. I've known you guys for quite a long time, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the Retirement Learning Center and John Carl is the fiduciary of that plan. Our plan advisor is Flynn Financial. And Joe, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but we can call it a case of the week. That's obviously, we're going to write this one up and put it in NapaNet as we always do. But you guys are going to be case of the week, because lo and behold, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, we're probably the most informed plan sponsor that one could have, which is good and bad, right? Because we can be a pain in the backside. But we had some testing issues at the RLC, and when I got informed we failed our test, even though we were a safe harbor, who did I call? Of course, I called our plan advisors. And I got to tell you, the way you helped us navigate with the record-keeping partner was nothing less than magic. And I think if an informed plan sponsor like the RLC is having real life plan issues, if they were on their own, or if they were in some state-run plan or some who knows what type of a plan, I don't know what we would have done without your support and help and guidance on our own case, which is going to be written up as case of the week, which will highlight Flynn Financial.
With all the knowledge you guys have, John, you've written a fairly complicated plan, so some of the large record keepers have a little hard time understanding. So I think that was part of it. But no, we want to be on top of things. I mean, we're very proactive. And as a matter of fact, I have a meeting with an audit partner in a big firm up in New York State that I've known for years. And, we're having him run through our software and run through some of our meeting minute clients. And would there be anything that you would add from the audit perspective that you want us to record keep? We did have one auditor reach back out to us and ask us, because now even a discretionary match, now the plan sponsor is required to send a notification to the participants no later than 90 days before the end of the plan year. So we had an auditor ask us to please formalize that, memorialize that in the meeting minutes, and that it was sent out. And we did a vote on it. We got the notice, and we stored it up there for the client, and verified it was sent out. So, we learn from our partners like RLC, we learn from auditors, we learn from our plan sponsors, and them going through audits and what are the requests that we're getting. Most everything, knock on wood, thank God, is up in the system, and the plan sponsors got access to all that information. And we even have auditor access, so the auditor can dial directly into our software and pull what they need for the audit. And particularly, they love having the meeting minutes there, because that meeting minutes also document all the education that the plan sponsors put forth. And it also pulls in all the demographics. So when the nicest part about doing what we do is when our staff comes back and says, gosh, this participant, who makes $37,000 a year literally is less stressed because we kind of shared them how we can get them to where they need to be, not in one big swoop, but kind of painlessly by doing auto increase with the provider. So, we really work hard on trying to bring both sides together, as Tim mentioned and you mentioned, because it's not just about the sponsors checking boxes. These things were designed by the Department of Labor and the IRS so that participants could retire with dignity and have enough money to live their retired life, potentially for 20, 30, 40 years. So to fund that, Social Security is going to fund part of that, but to fund that kind of, income in retirement, I mean, we focus, heavily on that to make sure that we're doing everything we can do. And again, the more participants we meet with, whether it's live or virtual, the more we meet with. So if you look at a plan that we put on, the software and we go through the first year and we maybe capture 22% of the participants to one-on-one, well, the second year, that number goes up to 45% because we're around that, hey, you got to talk to these guys. They're going to make you feel pretty comfortable about what you need to do, even if you're not on track right now. So those are the things that we focus on and really, really try to bring both sides. And I can't thank Tim enough for the resources he gives me to run my vertical. And it's much like the other folks that run their verticals. I mean, we have full support of Flynn. The investment team is top notch. I mean, second to none. And it makes our job a little bit easier. And then John, with the partnership that we've had together, I mean, we don't lack information. We reach out to you on a regular basis for clarity on different, laws, different Department of Labor notices, things like that. And that's really kind of where, and it is nice to be able to, go from a wholesaling role to be able to literally just focus on retirement for our plan sponsors and participants.
Well, all right, gentlemen, I think that summing it up here, you guys obviously, embody what we try to interview on the spectrum, which are thought leaders, but the industry's practitioners that are really bringing it to light across the spectrum. And Tim, with your silos that you've created here at Flynn Financial, I couldn't thank you enough for giving us some time today to interview you, Joe, as well, talking about the big growth vertical silo in Flynn Financial. So this is John Carl, thanking you for tuning in today to the Retirement Spectrum. We'll be back again next week with another episode for your tantalizing listening and viewing pleasure. Thanks again to Tim Flynn, Managing Partner, CEO of Flynn Financial, and Joe Piggott, Partner and Director of Retirement and Corporate Services at the $2 billion and growing investment boutique and advisory firm, Flynn Financial.